How do you become a mental coach or a sports psychologist? I get this question a lot, and I'm going to answer it for you today. There's not just one path you can take today to become a mental coach or a sports psychologist. Traditionally, when I was in school, you became a mental coach by becoming a professor and getting a PhD at the university level. However, there's many different options today because I see psychologists that take my certification course and want to do mental coaching. I've certified life coaches, for example. I've also certified sport coaches as well. I grew up in a small town called East Aurora, New York, the home of Fisher-Price, by the way. Back then, we didn't have video games. We didn't have iPhones. We didn't have computers or internet. So you had to find some things to do that occupied your time. I played football, hockey, lacrosse, tennis. We didn't specialize back then. I remember I used to play with my brother a lot. We'd wait for the pond to freeze over, and then we would go ahead and clear the pond, and we would play hockey with his buddies. There was no organized sports, right? We did have organized sports. I played organized sports, like hockey, for example. But oftentimes on our free times, we would just go out and skate, or we would go out and hit the tennis ball around, or work on our golf game. I started my education at the University of Buffalo working on a degree in psychology and went on and got a dual degree. It was called exercise science and physical therapy at the time. I took a class called sports psychology. Back then, it wasn't typical. Once I took the course, my advisor or the professor said, "You seem to really like this topic. I would suggest you go out and work with a guy named Ken Ravizza at Cal State Fullerton. He's doing some really good things with the teams and other athletes." Well, that's exactly what I did. I called up Ken and I told him that I wanted to come out and do my master's with him. He said, "Sure, go for it, enroll." So this is back in the mid-'80s or so, when I started working with Ken Ravizza at Cal State Fullerton. I really got excited about doing sports psychology when I was with Ken Ravizza. I would follow Ken around when he would do seminars with the teams, he'd work with the teams, and he'd do outside seminars outside of the educational system too, or outside of the teams at Cal State Fullerton. At the time, he was working with the gymnastics teams, both the men's and women's. He was also working with Augie Garrido, who was the baseball coach there at the time, and he knew the softball coach too. So Ken turned me on to the softball team, the hockey team, and the golf team. And so at that time, I was working with those teams based on Ken's introduction. I did relaxation and imagery with athletes and the teams that I worked with out there. And I also started doing some research with the golfers, finding out what makes you confident and what hurts your confidence. I had grown up playing golf. I had hometown friends that played golf, so I was really excited about working with golfers as well. At that time, I had my first client. He was a hometown golfer who played for Ball State, but he went on to play the mini tours and specifically the South African tour as well. So that was really the start of my career, when I started working with my hometown friend who needed help with his mental game. So in 1986, 1987, around there, I started working with golfers, really, and that's how I got into it. Now, my hometown friend introduced me some other high-level golfers. One was an NCAA champion. His name was E.J. Pfister. And E.J. introduced me to Brian Watts. And Brian Watts won 13 times on the Japan tour. So I would go to tour school with those guys and try to get them on tour. EJ actually qualified for the tour one year, and Brian was also on the tour as well, but he played primarily over in Japan. So I had a quick education right there of working with high-level golfers. Ken knew that, so he suggested, "Hey, why don't you go work with Bob Rotella at the University of Virginia?" And I said, "Great, sounds good." So I contacted Bob, I want to say around the fall of '87, and asked him if he had a spot and if I could apply to the university. In the fall of '87, he said, "Well, no, we already have incoming students, but you can try to apply for the spring semester." And that's exactly what I did. So I applied also to the University of Connecticut, and I applied to the University of Virginia and probably a couple other schools as well that were doing sports psychology at the time. Now, funny story. I had my bags packed and I was ready to drive off to the University of Connecticut from the Buffalo, New York area or from the East Aurora, New York area. I got a phone call from Bob Rotella and he said, "Come on down to the University of Virginia. We have a spot for you. You're not enrolled yet, but come on down. We'll get you enrolled as you go through the classes." So I drove down to Virginia instead, and I had to tell admissions department at the University of Connecticut that I wasn't going to make it. At Virginia with Rotella, I learned a completely different system about how he goes about mental coaching. It was all about confidence and trust in your skills and taking your practice game to competition. So I followed Bob Rotella around quite a bit when he was working with the various teams. At the same time, I was working with E.J. Pfister and some other golfers, some other tour professional golfers that I've met on tour as well. So this is in the late 80s, 89, 90, 91, and I finally graduated from the University of Virginia with a degree in education, but I specialized in sports psychology, motor learning, and I also had some counseling classes. After I graduated from University of Virginia with a PhD, I was like, oh yeah, I'm ready to take on the world. Well, a PhD is a teaching degree, and I went and I taught for 2 years. I taught at the Miami of Ohio. I got a 1-year teaching position there, and I also taught at the University of North Texas for 1 year. However, it was very difficult at the time to get a tenured track position. So I decided to go out on my own and work with athletes and start my own business. The problem was I had all this information about how to help athletes improve their mental game, how to help athletes get to the next level, how to help athletes succeed, but I knew nothing about business at the time. I was totally clueless. So I set up shop in Naples, Florida. And at the time, I was going out on tour and working with golfers. And so I was caddying for them and working inside the ropes, which was an incredible, incredible experience for me to see what they were going through firsthand. I actually caddied for E.J. Pfister when he turned professional at the New York State Open, and he won his very first professional event there. And so that was a wonderful experience for me to see golfers under pressure and how they handle that pressure. So I started Peak Performance Consultants, which turned into Peak Performance Sports a little bit later in Naples, Florida. So incidentally, I worked with the golf team when I was at the Miami of Ohio. I actually had them in my classes too. There was a couple golfers that were in my class, and one of those golfers was playing on the mini tours here up in Orlando, where I am now. So he said, "Why don't you come up to Orlando? It's a golf mecca. There's many mini tours up here. You could work with the golfers up here." I moved to Orlando, and I started working with my friend who was my past student. He started to introduce me to some other golfers, and I started going to the mini tours, introducing myself on the mini tours. Yes, I would go out to the events. I had a little newsletter that I made up. It was called Golf Insights, and I would hand that out to the golfers coming off the golf course. Around 2000, I started my own certification program called the MGCP Certification Program, or the Mental Game Coaching Professional Certification Program. So at the time, I was starting to develop products, and I was working with athletes at the time. The MGCP certification program was another arm of Peak Performance Sports, where we certified qualified coaches and therapists and also life coaches as well. It's been an extremely successful program. I've been doing the program for over 17 years now. We've had many, many people come through the program and really love the system that we do. I started peaksports.com in around 1986 when I moved up to Orlando. I was one of the very first websites that were out there dedicated towards golf psychology or sports psychology. I started doing video coaching or virtual coaching via Skype way before the pandemic came, when everybody was on Zoom and Skype and FaceTime. So here at Peak Performance Sports, we've been working with athletes via video or phone coaching as well for many, many years. And so that opened up a panacea of being able to work with athletes worldwide. So we have grown here at Peak Performance Sports over the years. I have a full-time mental coach working with me. Her name is Jacqueline Ellis. I've had other mental coaches working for me as well. So that's my route that I've taken to become a mental coach. If you want to learn my entire system for doing mental coaching, I would jump over to my website at mentalgamecoachingpro.com. That's the MGCP website where I provide more information about my certification program. I'll probably be in the field a couple more years, but if you want the know-how and the system and all the experience that I've had over the last 30 plus years, then I would suggest you jump on my MGCP course sooner than later. All right, thanks for watching.